The moment you forget you're mortal, there is a heartbeat, faint, steady, fragile. Then silence. That silence is where your life truly begins. Every breath you take could be the last, and yet you scroll, you rush, you postpone. We live as if tomorrow is guaranteed, as if the future owes us another sunrise. But Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do, say, and think." Death is not an intruder. It's the shadow that makes the light visible. It gives weight to every word you speak, every glance you share, every act of kindness you choose not to delay. Still, we treat it like a distant storm, something that happens elsewhere, to someone else. The Stoics knew this illusion well. They called it the greatest tragedy of the human mind, not death itself, but forgetting that it's near. Because the moment you forget you're mortal, you stop truly living. Neuroscience confirms what the ancients intuited. The denial of death dulls the brain's sense of urgency and gratitude. It numbs our perception of the present. To remember death is to wake the mind from its trance, to shift the brain from autopilot to awareness. Memento Mori is not about sorrow, it's about intensity. The intensity of being fully here, fully alive, knowing that time is not endless. And that's what makes it sacred. So pause, feel your pulse. You are alive now, and that is everything. So why does remembering death make life more vivid? The paradox of life. How denial of death deadens the soul. Modern civilization is built upon an unspoken agreement. We will pretend not to die. We design cities that never sleep, surround ourselves with artificial light, and drown our silence with sound, not because we love noise, but because we fear what the quiet reveals. Underneath every glowing screen and every schedule packed to exhaustion hides a simple terror, the awareness that one day all of this will end. Seneca observed this condition nearly 2,000 years ago when he wrote, "We waste our lives as if we had another one to live." His words slice through centuries of progress and distraction, exposing the same wound, the human tendency to flee from the truth of impermanence. We scroll, consume, and accumulate, convincing ourselves that speed is purpose and possession is meaning. But deep inside, we know that none of it lasts. Every pleasure fades, every ambition is temporary, and yet we keep running, not toward life, but away from death. Neuroscience reveals the same paradox through a different lens. The brain has a built-in system called the default mode network, the circuit that activates when the mind is idle. It fills the silence with internal noise, what-ifs, should-haves, and endless stories about who we think we are. This neural hum is our modern armor against mortality. It keeps us floating between past and future, anywhere but here. But in doing so, it robs us of presence, gratitude, and awe, the very emotions that make existence luminous. Epictetus would say that the man who runs from death runs from life itself. Every distraction, every indulgence, every obsession with the trivial is a quiet surrender to fear. We think we are avoiding suffering, but in truth, we are numbing our capacity for joy. The Stoics understood that remembering death does not drain life of color, it deepens the palette. When you stop pretending that time is infinite, every second becomes holy. The warmth of sunlight on your skin, the breath of someone you love, the silence before dawn, they are no longer ordinary. They are miracles framed by finitude. Daniel Goleman's research on emotional intelligence confirms what Seneca taught intuitively. Awareness of our inner world determines the quality of our outer one. When we escape reflection, we also escape growth. Distraction may soothe the nerves, but it withers the soul. Our attention, the most sacred currency of consciousness, is spent on triviality, leaving us spiritually bankrupt. And yet, the Stoics did not despair. They saw mortality as the ultimate teacher. Marcus Aurelius meditated each morning on the fragility of life, not to grieve, but to awaken. Death, he believed, is not the opposite of life, but its constant companion, the silent presence that makes every choice urgent, every act deliberate. By remembering the end, we remember to live. The paradox of life is this: we seek to escape death, but in doing so, we stop truly living. To deny mortality is to deny meaning. To face it is to finally breathe, to finally see, to finally love without guarantee. The Stoics did not fear death, they used it. They turned awareness of the inevitable into the sharpest tool for self-mastery. For in remembering that we will die, we remember that we are alive, and that realization changes everything. The ancient art of dying daily to the Stoics, death was not an event to be feared, but a lesson to be rehearsed. Each sunrise was an opportunity to prepare for the setting sun, not through despair, but through presence. They called it Memento Mori, remember that you must die. Yet the phrase was never a morbid chant. It was a compass pointing back to what matters. Epictetus instructed his students to imagine their mortality often. When you embrace that life can end at any moment, you stop treating time like an inheritance. You begin to live like a debtor, aware, awake, grateful. Seneca echoed the same wisdom when he wrote that each day we die a little. Every hour that passes is a piece of ourselves we surrender to eternity. The wise do not flee from this fact. They honor it, because what is temporary gains meaning through its fragility. Modern neuroscience, centuries later, confirms the psychological transformation this awareness brings. Studies on mortality salience show that when people confront their finitude consciously, activity shifts in the brain. The amygdala, the center of fear, begins to quiet, while the prefrontal cortex, the seat of reason and awareness, grows more active. In that balance, anxiety dissolves and clarity emerges. We move from panic to perspective, from survival to serenity. The Stoics had no fMRI scanners, yet they knew this truth by introspection. When you face what you fear most, it loses its dominion. To die daily is to practice letting go of anger before sleep, of envy before speech, of resentment before dawn. Each small surrender trains the soul for the final release. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Do every act of your life as though it were the last." Not because death stalks you, but because meaning fades when you assume you have endless chances. Joe Dispenza's work on neuroplasticity aligns with this ancient practice. The mind, he teaches, changes itself through repetition and awareness. When you meditate on impermanence, you are literally rewiring your neural pathways, shifting from fear of loss to gratitude for existence. The brain learns to replace resistance with acceptance, reactivity with intention. It's not self-punishment, it's liberation from illusion. To die daily is not to live in sadness, it is to live awake. It is to understand that everything you love, every moment you touch, every word you speak, carries the quiet echo of eternity. That awareness sharpens perception, cleanses emotion, and aligns your actions with what is real. Each day becomes a small rehearsal of detachment, a reminder that the essence of peace lies not in control, but in surrender. The Stoics knew this. Neuroscience confirms it, and life proves it. To live as if dying is to finally live as if awake. Dopamine and the illusion of immortality. We live in an age that promises endless reward. Likes, notifications, constant novelty. Each moment a new stimulus. Each stimulus a small burst of dopamine. But beneath this chemical dance lies a lie, that tomorrow will always come, that we have infinite chances to start again. The Stoics would have called it madness, to live enslaved by what pleases us. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "It is not death that a man should fear, but never beginning to live." And in our world, we rarely begin to live because we are constantly chasing the next hit of excitement. Dopamine in its essence is not pleasure itself, but anticipation, the restless spark that drives us toward what we desire. Neuroscience has shown that this molecule is the architect of human motivation. It shapes our habits, our attention, our sense of progress. Yet when ungoverned, it becomes the architect of distraction. Andrew Huberman often speaks of the dopamine loop, the self-reinforcing cycle where the brain craves the pursuit, not the fulfillment. The more we seek stimulation, the less we can tolerate stillness. The mind begins to confuse motion for meaning, quantity for quality, and survival for purpose. This is how the illusion of immortality takes form, not through philosophy, but through chemistry. We behave as if the next reward will save us from mortality itself. The Stoics, long before neuroscience existed, identified the same mechanism in moral language. They called it hedon, the pleasure that enslaves when unexamined. Seneca warned that he who is a slave to his body cannot be free. And what is addiction, whether to work, to status, or to a screen, if not the body commanding the mind? Dopamine fuels our ambition, but without virtue, without temperance and awareness, it becomes a tyrant. Huberman explains that when we constantly reward ourselves without effort, the baseline of dopamine drops. Pleasure loses its taste. Joy becomes impossible. The Stoics saw this as a spiritual poverty, to possess everything and enjoy nothing. Joe Dispenza describes how this cycle imprints in the nervous system. Every craving creates a neurological expectation, a loop that narrows consciousness. The more we chase, the smaller we become. The Stoic practice, however, reverses the pattern by delaying gratification, by mastering impulse, by anchoring joy, not in consumption, but in character. This rewires both the brain and the soul. To remember death is to break the dopamine illusion. It resets the mind to what truly matters, the quiet satisfaction of living deliberately, without constant hunger for more. When you meditate on mortality, the noise of craving begins to fade. You no longer measure life by stimulation, but by stillness. And in that stillness, something ancient awakens: gratitude, presence, meaning. The Stoics were not against pleasure. They were against being owned by it. They sought the higher reward, the serenity of a mind no longer deceived by endless tomorrows. Because when pleasure fades, what remains is character. And character endures beyond the body, beyond the rush, beyond the illusion of immortality. The discipline of presence. There is a kind of peace that only reveals itself when everything else is stripped away. It is not comfort, not pleasure, not distraction. It is presence, the quiet strength of being fully alive within a single, fleeting moment. The Stoics believed that presence was the foundation of wisdom. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Confine yourself to the present, not as a command to ignore the past or the future, but as an invitation to inhabit what is real. Because the past exists only as memory, the future as imagination, and both steal the clarity of now." Modern neuroscience affirms this timeless truth. The mind, left untrained, wanders nearly half the time, drifting between regret and anticipation. This constant mental noise activates stress circuits in the brain and weakens attention networks. But when you return to presence, to the raw simplicity of breath, sensation, and awareness, the brain reorganizes itself. Andrew Huberman's research shows that focused attention increases dopamine in a balanced way, reinforcing meaning rather than mindless pursuit. Mindfulness, repeated over time, reshapes the neural architecture of calm. Presence, then, is not escape, it is mastery. It is a conscious act of rebellion against distraction. Each moment you choose awareness over anxiety, you reclaim a fragment of your soul from the chaos of the world. Seneca compared life to a river, always moving, never still. You cannot step into the same waters twice. To resist this flow is to suffer. To flow with it is to live. In that current, the Stoic finds freedom, not by clinging to what changes, but by witnessing it without losing his center. Daniel Goleman's studies on emotional intelligence illuminate this same principle. When we cultivate presence, the prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for regulation and empathy, gains strength. We respond rather than react. Emotions still arise, but they no longer command us. We become observers, not prisoners, of our own mind. The Stoics called this apatheia, not the absence of feeling, but the mastery of it. A heart steady in the storm, a mind untouched by the noise of the world. And yet, presence requires discipline, the hardest kind of discipline, to stop running. To sit with yourself without reaching for a screen, to feel time passing without trying to escape it, to listen deeply, to others, to nature, to the quiet within. This is the essence of spiritual strength, not force, but attention. Joe Dispenza teaches that where attention goes, energy flows. Neuroscience confirms this literally. The neurons you fire most often become the highways of your consciousness. When you anchor your awareness in the present, you are sculpting the brain toward peace, toward gratitude, toward life. And so the Stoic and the scientist converge. Both seek the same truth. That the mind, when still, becomes luminous. That every breath fully lived is eternity in disguise. Presence is not escape. It is resistance against oblivion. In presence, death loses its sting because you have already met it. In the silence between two breaths, where time dissolves and only awareness remains. Between flesh and eternity. To live is to stand at the intersection of two worlds, the fragile and the eternal. We are bodies made of dust and breath, yet within us burns something that seems untouched by decay. Every human life unfolds between these two poles, matter and meaning, biology and spirit. Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, taught that virtue is harmony with nature, not only with rivers and skies, but with the nature within us, the body that aches, the mind that desires, the soul that observes. To live wisely is not to reject the flesh, but to understand its rhythm, to honor its needs without becoming its slave. Cleanthes, his successor, called this balance the music of existence. The body is the instrument, the soul the player, and wisdom is the art of keeping both in tune. Modern science, in its own language, points toward the same truth. Joe Dispenza describes how the mind and body are not separate entities, but parts of a single energy system. Each emotion releases chemicals that shape our biology. Each thought triggers a cascade of molecular signals that sculpt who we are. When we repeat emotions of fear, resentment, or desire, the body becomes addicted to the past. But when we elevate our mind, through gratitude, awareness, and purpose, we reprogram our physiology. We are not prisoners of the flesh, but architects of its experience. The Stoics understood this through contemplation. They believed the soul, or hegemonikon, was the ruling principle, a fragment of the logos, the rational order of the cosmos. To live by virtue was to align the microcosm of the self with the macrocosm of the universe. When you act with wisdom, courage, temperance, and justice, you become synchronized with eternity. And in that alignment, fear of death dissolves. Neuroscience now observes what the Stoics intuited. When we transcend habitual emotion, activity decreases in the amygdala, the brain's fear center, and increases in the prefrontal cortex, the seat of higher reasoning. The mind literally rises above the body. You begin to see sensations not as threats, but as signals. Pain becomes information. Desire becomes choice. Mortality becomes perspective. Marcus Aurelius meditated on this every dawn. He reminded himself that he was a body soon to vanish and a soul capable of reason. To him, the acceptance of death was not resignation, but revelation. The realization that the same nature that takes life also sustains the stars. He wrote, "When you arise in the morning, think of what a privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love." In that thought lies transcendence, the union of flesh and eternity. When you stop dividing the physical from the spiritual, you begin to live as both, a being of nerve and light, rooted in the soil, yet reaching for the infinite. To accept mortality is to live beyond the body's fear, to see the eternal through the transient, and in that acceptance, courage is born. Courage, the first virtue of the mortal mind. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is the mastery of it. It is the calm decision to stand firm while every instinct tells you to flee. The Stoics called it the first virtue because without it, none of the others can exist. Wisdom demands courage to face truth. Temperance demands courage to restrain desire. Justice demands courage to act when silence is safer. Cato the Younger embodied this principle to its final breath. As tyranny rose over Rome, he refused to compromise his integrity. When all was lost, he met death with composure, not as defeat but as declaration. His final act was not despair, it was defiance against corruption. For Cato, the value of life was not its length, but its honor. Neuroscience explains courage as a precise physiological symphony. The amygdala, our ancient alarm bell, floods the body with adrenaline when we face threat. But in moments of courage, another region, the anterior cingulate cortex, intervenes. It modulates fear, allowing awareness to override instinct. Courage, then, is not recklessness. It is the brain choosing clarity over chaos. It is awareness mastering reflex. Andrew Huberman describes this process as top-down control. When the prefrontal cortex, the seat of reason, stays active under stress, the mind reclaims command from the body. This is the biological form of Stoic discipline. The same mechanism Marcus Aurelius practiced when he wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and you have the power to revoke this at any moment." Courage begins there, in perception. It is not forged in moments of glory, but in the quiet choices of every day, to speak the truth when lies are easier, to stand by your values when comfort tempts you to bend. It is the decision to rise again after failure, to act rightly even when the world does not reward you. Daniel Goleman calls this emotional regulation, but the Stoics called it virtue. To hold your composure under pressure is to be free. Because nothing external, not fear, not pain, not loss, can dictate who you are. The body may tremble, but the will remains still. That stillness is power. Joe Dispenza's research adds another dimension. When we consciously choose courage, we alter the body's chemistry. Heart coherence increases, stress hormones decrease, and neural patterns of resilience strengthen. Each act of bravery becomes a biological signal, teaching the nervous system that fear is not fatal. This is neuroplasticity in action, the rewiring of mortality into mastery. The Stoics believed that every courageous act was a declaration of alignment with the Logos, the universal order that governs all things. To live courageously is to live truthfully, without disguise. To meet pain and uncertainty with dignity is to affirm your place in the cosmic design. And perhaps courage is the purest form of faith. Faith that meaning exists even in suffering. Faith that the soul remains untouchable. Faith that virtue endures longer than breath. True courage is not loud. It is steady breathing in uncertainty. It is the quiet conviction that even if everything falls apart, you will not betray your own nature. And with courage comes clarity. The order beneath chaos. Every ending hides a pattern, every fall Every loss, every silence has a hidden rhythm that the impatient mind cannot hear. To remember death is to begin perceiving this order, the quiet structure beneath the chaos of existence. Marcus Aurelius called it logos, the rational fabric of the universe. To him, nothing was random. Even suffering had a reason within the great design. Modern psychology would call this meaning-making. Neuroscience calls it pattern recognition. The human brain is wired to seek coherence, to turn disorder into narrative. But the Stoics saw a higher order, not merely the patterns we invent, but the cosmic order we belong to. Jordan Peterson describes this same principle in modern terms. Chaos is the raw potential of life, and order is the structure that gives it meaning. To live well is to walk the narrow line between them, to shape chaos without fearing it, to find harmony without clinging to control. The Stoic path is precisely this balance, to act with reason inside the unpredictable flow of fate. When you remember that death governs all things, you stop resisting impermanence. You begin to see that decay is not destruction, but transformation. A star dies, and its ashes form new worlds. A leaf falls, and its body nourishes the soil for another spring. So too with our lives, every loss becomes the seed of renewal if accepted with awareness. Neuroscience mirrors this natural wisdom. In moments of deep reflection, such as meditation on mortality, the brain's activity shifts from the limbic system, the home of emotion, to the default mode network, where self and meaning merge. It's as if the mind reconfigures itself to glimpse the vastness beyond individual experience. The more we contemplate impermanence, the more we sense connection, the interdependence of all things. Zeno and Chrysippus would call this oikiosis, the recognition that we are not isolated beings but parts of a greater whole. When the Stoic accepts death, he doesn't surrender. He aligns himself with nature's flow. He stops demanding that life obey him and learns instead to harmonize with its music. This is not passive resignation. It is active participation, the choice to play your note in the symphony with precision, humility, and love. Jordan Peterson speaks of meaning as the antidote to chaos. The Stoics said the same, but they rooted it in virtue. For them, meaning is not found in pleasure or success, but in integrity, in living rightly, even when the outcome is uncertain. Chaos becomes unbearable only when you forget your purpose. Once you remember that virtue is your compass, you can walk through storms without losing direction. To see the order beneath chaos is to see life as it truly is, a cycle of emergence and return, of creation and dissolution. The universe does not mourn, it transforms, and so must we. The Stoics taught that remembering death brings peace, not because it ends fear, but because it reveals structure. Everything changes, yet nothing is lost. It only takes new form. To understand this is to stop clinging to permanence and start living in rhythm with eternity. So what do we do with this borrowed time, living the Stoic way, virtue, before the clock stops? When we finally grasp that time is borrowed, not owned, something changes. Life stops being a negotiation and becomes a vow. The Stoics lived by this understanding that every action, every choice, every word must be shaped by virtue because there may be no second chance to correct it. Musonius Rufus taught that philosophy means training for life, not reading about wisdom, but embodying it. He believed the truest philosopher was not one who spoke of virtue, but one who lived it while the world watched in silence. Virtue for the Stoics was not decoration, it was the architecture of the soul. Modern science now confirms what they sensed intuitively. Behavior changes the brain. Each act of discipline strengthens the neural circuits of willpower. Each moment of compassion rewires empathy. Daniel Goleman calls this emotional mastery, and Joe Dispenza expands it further, showing how consistent conscious action literally reshapes the body's chemistry. In simple terms, doing good changes who you are, biologically and spiritually. To live the Stoic way, therefore, is to practice life as deliberate creation. Temperance governs desire. Courage steadies fear. Justice expands empathy. Wisdom guides all. These are not abstract ideals. They are psychological algorithms, ancient tools for mental clarity and peace. Marcus Aurelius woke each morning reminding himself that he would meet the ungrateful, the jealous, the ignorant, yet he vowed not to mirror them. He refused to let circumstance dictate his character. That is Stoic victory, the triumph of inner governance over external chaos. Huberman's studies on focus align perfectly with this. Attention is limited energy. What you attend to, you amplify. The Stoic, aware of this truth long before neuroscience, chooses where to place his mind, not on what he cannot control, but on what he can. This simple redirection of focus alters both perception and physiology. When you live by virtue, you are not merely surviving, you are crafting meaning with every heartbeat. You begin to measure life not by years, but by integrity. The pursuit of pleasure fades, replaced by the pursuit of excellence. And in that pursuit, anxiety loses power, because each day becomes complete in itself. Seneca wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." The Stoic refuses waste. He transforms every second into a manifestation of purpose. Modern psychology calls this flow. In that state, time dissolves, the self disappears. What remains is pure presence, pure creation, pure being. To live the Stoic way is to approach the end without regret, to know that nothing essential was left undone, not because life was perfect, but because you lived it consciously, courageously, in alignment with what is eternal. The body will end. The possessions will vanish, but character, that invisible architecture, remains. When the clock stops, virtue continues its echo in those you touched, in the order you help sustain, in the peace you leave behind. And when the end comes, there is no regret, only silence filled with meaning. When silence becomes the teacher, there comes a moment when words can no longer hold what we've learned, when thought gives way to awareness, and awareness gives way to silence. That silence is not emptiness. It is the final lesson. The Stoics believed that philosophy begins in reason, but ends in peace. After a lifetime of reflection, Seneca wrote that death is not an enemy, but the return home of the soul to nature. Marcus Aurelius, facing the end of his days, spoke softly to himself, "You have been a citizen of this great city. What does it matter if it is for 5 or 50 years? The law that brought you in will also take you out." To him, this was not resignation. It was understanding. Modern neuroscience describes something similar when it studies near-death experiences or deep meditation, a dissolution of the self. Activity in the parietal lobes quiets, and with it, the brain's sense of separateness fades. The boundaries between I and everything else begin to blur. What the Stoics called unity with nature, science now calls coherence. In that moment, there is no fear, only recognition. The heartbeat slows, the breath becomes still. What remains is awareness, untouched by decay, unbothered by time. It is here, in this stillness, that we glimpse eternity, not as endless duration, but as infinite depth. To remember death daily is to prepare for this peace. It teaches you that nothing truly belongs to you, and that freedom begins where attachment ends. Every possession, every status, every grievance fades into silence. What endures is the soul's discipline, the steadiness you cultivated when life tested you, the love you gave when no one saw, the virtue you chose when it cost you something. In the end, there are no more lessons to learn, only truths to remember, that everything changes, that everything connects, and that everything returns. This is what the Stoics meant by living according to nature, to breathe, to give, to let go, and to trust the order that made you. The heartbeat fades again, the world grows quiet. The narrator whispers, "One day your name will be spoken for the last time. Let it mean something." A final echo rises, not from fear, but from reverence. Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. Marcus Aurelius. Finally, the screen fades to black. Only one phrase remains, suspended in the silence. Remembering death is how you truly start living.